Most men don't fail in relationships because they are cruel, careless, or irresponsible. They fail because they misunderstand what emotional strength actually looks like, and because they confuse kindness with weakness, patience with passivity, and love with self-abandonment. At the beginning of a relationship, everything feels easy. Respect comes naturally. Affection flows without friction. Small disagreements pass without consequence. A man believes that if he remains agreeable, calm, and accommodating, harmony will last. But time reveals a pattern that surprises many men. The more they avoid conflict, the more conflict finds them. The more they comply, the less they are respected. And the more they try to keep peace at any cost, the more unstable the relationship becomes. This isn't because women enjoy chaos or disrespect. It's because emotional security does not come from compliance. It comes from strength. A healthy relationship does not require constant fighting, nor does it thrive on tension for its own sake. But it does require clarity of authority, someone who sets boundaries, enforces them, and remains emotionally grounded when challenged. Without that, instability grows quietly until it explodes. Most men are taught that the solution to relationship problems is communication, empathy, and compromise. These matter, but only when they rest on a foundation of emotional strength. Without that foundation, communication becomes negotiation under pressure. Empathy turns into self-erasure, and compromise becomes surrender. Women do not feel safe with men who collapse under emotional stress. Safety, in this context, does not mean gentleness or politeness. It means reliability under pressure. It means knowing that when emotions rise, the man remains centered, decisive, and unmoved by provocation. To understand this dynamic, it helps to look at how authority forms in human psychology. As children, we did not admire our parents for their wealth, appearance, or social status. We admired them for their ability to handle problems. They were the ones we turned to when something went wrong. They were calm when we panicked, certain when we were confused, strong when we were overwhelmed. That sense of security did not come from words. It came from behavior. Adult relationships operate on a similar emotional logic. A woman tests, not consciously, but instinctively, whether the man she is with can remain grounded when challenged. These tests may look like irritation, sarcasm, disrespectful remarks, or emotional pressure. They are not requests for cruelty. They are checks for stability. When a man ignores these moments, pretends not to notice them, or responds emotionally, he fails the test, not morally, but psychologically. The behavior escalates, not because she wants to hurt him, but because uncertainty grows. If he cannot hold his ground over small boundaries, how will he handle larger pressures in life? This is why conflicts tend to intensify over time instead of resolving themselves. Early disrespect, when unaddressed, becomes normalized. Small provocations turn into open contempt, and eventually, the relationship becomes defined by constant tension and resentment. Many men misinterpret this escalation as proof that women are unreasonable or combative by nature, but the pattern points elsewhere. When boundaries are unclear, instability fills the vacuum. Emotional strength does not mean shouting, threatening, or dominating. It means responding decisively without emotional volatility. It means taking action rather than pleading for understanding. It means demonstrating, through behavior, that certain lines cannot be crossed. One of the clearest indicators of emotional weakness is the need to explain oneself excessively. Men who feel secure do not justify their identity, their worth, or their boundaries. They state them. Men who feel insecure over-explain, hoping logic will replace authority. It never does. This is why confidence cannot be faked through status, money, appearance, or achievements. Those things may attract attention, but they do not command respect if the man behind them is emotionally reactive. Insecurity leaks through behavior faster than words can conceal it. People can sense this within seconds. The need for validation, the compulsion to prove oneself, the inability to tolerate disapproval. These signals are unmistakable, and once they are noticed, respect erodes rapidly. In contrast, emotionally strong men are comfortable being misunderstood. They do not rush to correct every assumption. They do not negotiate their self-worth. They are willing to lose approval rather than lose themselves. This willingness is the foundation of authority. The most powerful boundary a man can possess is the ability to walk away, not as a threat, not as manipulation, but as a genuine option he is prepared to take. When this option exists, it changes the entire dynamic of a relationship. Behavior improves not because of fear, but because respect returns. A woman who knows that a man will not tolerate disrespect, and that he does not need her to survive emotionally, feels paradoxically more secure. The relationship becomes calmer, not more volatile. The need to test diminishes because the answer is already known. This is where many men get confused. They believe that enforcing boundaries will push a woman away. In reality, failing to enforce them almost always does. Compliance does not create peace. It creates contempt. This is why attempts to fix relationships through gifts, apologies, or increased effort often fail. When a man responds to disrespect by giving more, he confirms the very weakness that caused the problem. The behavior continues because the underlying issue remains unresolved. Respect is restored not through persuasion, but through consequence. This does not mean cruelty, it means fairness. Fairness requires proportional response. When boundaries are crossed, action must follow, calmly, decisively, and without drama. The action itself communicates strength far more clearly than any explanation ever could. Men who understand this do not live in constant conflict. In fact, their relationships are often quieter and more peaceful. Once boundaries are established and enforced early, repeated testing becomes unnecessary. The emotional environment stabilizes. Problems arise when men delay this process, hoping the situation will improve on its own. It rarely does. The longer disrespect is tolerated, the harder it becomes to correct. It is important to understand that none of this is about hatred, dominance, or control. It is about emotional leadership. Leadership requires the courage to act when necessary, even if it risks discomfort or loss. A man who cannot walk away is not choosing to stay. He is trapped. And trapped men do not inspire respect. This is why fame, wealth, and attractiveness do not guarantee relationship success. Without emotional strength, these traits become irrelevant. Without boundaries, advantages turn into liabilities. The more a man has to lose, the more he tolerates, until he loses everything anyway. The harsh truth is that many men are not punished for being bad partners, but for being weak ones. Weakness invites chaos. Strength creates order. Strength, however, is not loud. It does not seek validation. It does not announce itself. It simply acts when required and remains unmoved when tested. A man who embodies this does not need to demand respect. He receives it naturally. Healthy relationships are not built on endless compromise, nor on constant confrontation. They are built on clarity. When roles are clear, behavior aligns. When boundaries are firm, peace follows. Every relationship will encounter conflict. That first conflict is critical. It sets the tone for everything that follows. How a man handles it, whether he avoids it, collapses emotionally, or responds with calm authority, determines the future dynamic. Men who prepare for this moment do not fear it. They understand that conflict is not a sign of failure, but an opportunity to establish structure. When handled correctly, it prevents years of dysfunction. The lesson is simple, but not easy. Emotional strength must be demonstrated, not discussed. Boundaries must be enforced, not explained. And respect must be earned through consistency, not requested through effort. A man who understands this no longer chases approval. He no longer negotiates his worth. He no longer fears loss more than disrespect. And because of that, he becomes the kind of man people choose to stay with, not because they are controlled, but because they feel secure. This is the difference between relationships that decay slowly and those that endure. One is built on fear of loss. The other is built on strength of character. Most men learn this lesson only after years of frustration. Some never learn it at all. But those who do find that relationships stop feeling like battles and start feeling like partnerships, with mutual respect, stability, and peace. Not because they became harsher, but because they became stronger.